Good morning. Thank you. I'm Andrea Specht. I'm the Executive Director of Bloomington Theater and Art Center, and it's a delight to welcome you all this morning to what we can only hope will be as fun as we imagined it would be when we dreamt up this event. So welcome to the Watercolor Wash-Off, which is part of our Watercolor Festival going on for a couple more weeks. We are going to get into the action very quickly, but before we do that, I just have a couple of acknowledgments I'd like to make. First, I certainly want to thank our participating artists who will be introduced momentarily. Maybe I should say contestants, so thank you all. And our color commentator extraordinaire, Roz Stendahl, who you'll also be hearing from shortly. Rachel Flenchie, our Director of Visual Arts, who's somewhere in this theater. There she is, trying to shrink away from my acknowledgement. Has done a wonderful job altogether with the Watercolor Festival and has been our point person on this event, and I just really thank you for your leadership and creativity. We also have a couple of board members here. I've seen at least two of them, John Schlegel from our board of directors and Mark Eaton, who is one of our raffle ticket sellers, so thank you to the two of you for being here. I would like to thank all of the other volunteers who have been part of this event. There are a number of them. They are helping out in the lobby and here, and will be revealing the still lives and doing all kinds of things. So thank you to them. As you can imagine, we just can't do an event like this without a lot of people's help. And last but not least, I would like to thank a number of sponsors who have made this event possible, and also the Watercolor Festival, and frankly, all of our programming throughout the year through their support. First of all, our great friends from Wet Paint Artist Materials. Yay, there's Greg back there, one of the floor managers, and I won't put too much of an emphasis or too fine of a point on this, but there's a lot of trendiness now around buying local and supporting local enterprise, and I think they represent the best of that. So let's please make sure to support them. Go buy your black velvet brush, whatever supplies you've been coveting. Apparently they have quite an inventory here today, so please help us by supporting them. I'd also like to thank our friends from the Minnesota Watercolor Society and the North Star Watercolor Society, who are very much here in force and do great work, so thank you to both of the societies. Lastly, the Minnesota State Arts Board and the National Endowment for the Arts, both of which have given support that helps us do programming like this. Okay, I'm about to turn it over to Roz. One last thing, you're going to be hearing a lot about raffle and voting and all of that. I just want to encourage you to buy raffle tickets and vote on paintings, because where else can you just buy as many votes as you want to? You can do that here. So Roz will tell you a little bit more about the rules for that, and I'm going to turn it over to Roz. So thanks.
Thank you, Andrea. So we'll give Andrea. First of all, welcome to Watercolor Stadium. We based this on Iron Chef, and that's the way we're going to proceed. You may or may not know what we're going to do is there are 3 identical still lives. The artists have never seen these still lives. And what's going to happen in a couple moments is I'm going to have volunteers come out, reveal them all at exactly the same time. The clocks will go, and they will have an hour to create a watercolor still life of what they see. But before we go further, I'd just like to say a couple words about the 3 artists so that you get to know them if you don't already know them. Our first artist is Pat Undis. Pat's a passionate art teacher who enjoys competing in plein air festivals. She exhibits locally and nationally. Pat credits her elder sister, Carolyn Anderson, who's a master painter with the American Impressionist Society, as a key inspiration in learning that both practice and patience are the surest way to improve your craft. Watching her sister has made Pat fearless. She credits Jean Dobie, who's a painter that many of you might know her work of, and Gail Speckman, another painter, helping Pat to see color. And Judy Betts was someone who taught her how to simplify. She loves drawing directly with a brush, and her primary approach is to look for value patterns and break them up into a pleasing way and pleasing shapes. She describes her style as soft impressions recording her life. Dan Weimer, our next artist, many of you I know from the Watercolor Society might remember him as a past president. He went to school to become a graphic designer, and after completing his college, he trained himself to paint. He took inspiration from John Singer Sargent and Winslow Homer and Christopher Schenck. He's also very fond of the Canadian painters from the 1910s through the 40s known as the Group of Seven. He calls his style direct and impatient. And so we may see some of that exhibited here today. And he recently has been combining acrylic and watercolor in a more stylized manner that is rhythmic and abstract. As far as his working method, he likes to begin each painting with a thumbnail sketch because, as he says, he's always a designer. Jim Turner works as an anesthesiologist at Ridgeville Medical Center. Watercolor is his hobby that he follows passionately. While he's had no formal art education, he's taken workshops with talented artists including Stephen Quiller, Margaret Martin, and Andy Evanson. He also loves Winslow Homer, Sargent, and the other great watercolorists. He likes to begin each painting with a value study and to come up with a compositional approach. Jim provided a little quote that sort of sums up his philosophy for me to share with you today. He believes that you should love what you do, be passionate about learning, don't care much for the result as for the process. You can't help but grow, not just as an artist, but in appreciation for art and the world around us. Pat and Dan both have websites in their name, patundis.com and danweimer.com. Jim doesn't have an internet website right now. So, no. Anyway, so now what I'd like to do is so you sort of know what's going to happen, you know who the artists are, and they have not, I've been here, they've not seen anything that's going on. I'd like to invite our volunteers to come out and take their positions. And Andrea, you have your, yeah. So we're getting our clocks all synchronized here. And what I'm going to say is go ahead and take the top off first, if you wouldn't mind taking that off. Oh, is there a foul on that? We've got to drop a flag. Okay, and now you can take the sides off. This is the first time they're seeing this. And if you would carry those materials off with you so that we don't trip on them later. Okay, so watercolorists, your hour starts now. I'll be giving you updates. Andrea, is your timer going? Okay, my timer's. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let people have a moment to sort of adjust, and I'm going to talk about some other things so that we can let them have a moment, this crucial time to sort of decide, but then we can bother them. So one of the things that I would like to talk to you about is materials and some of the things that they may or may not be using. Pat's going to get a camera out, I think, to help her with composition. Sometimes if you flatten something out as the camera does, you can see better the values and patterns that you might want to use. But, oh, and I could ask if you could turn off your cell phones, or thank you for the reminder, or at least put them on that vibratory kind of way. So what's really exciting to me today is that we're going to see artists each approach the same problem from their own creative stance. We're going to get to see how they use their editorial eye and what compositional and color choices they make. And I'm trying to see, we've already got Jim working there on his value study. I think that's what he's doing. And can we read Jim's name up there? So on each of the boards, we have the artist's name. See up at the top, you can see Jim Turner, and that will help you see who's being shown at one time. Okay. And again, I'm just going to keep talking for a couple minutes about watercolor because there might be some non-watercolor artists in the audience, and so I'd just like to share some historical stuff with you. Watercolor is a very old medium. They've got, we can say cave paintings, as simple as putting pigment up on the wall is essentially a form of watercolor. It's very basic. But we have actual examples of watercolor mixed with gum arabic as we would use it in the modern day, as far back as the Egyptians in their tombs. Inside the sarcophagus, they would often paint a very lifelike representation of someone in watercolor. And so it's a very, very old medium. But what happened to this medium is that previous to the 1700s, if you were going to paint in watercolor, you had to go down to the chemist's and you had to buy all your materials, and you had to actually paint your, or mix your paints instead of just going someplace and buying them commercially made. And in 1766, a gentleman named William Reeves, who was English, invented something called the cake watercolor. It wasn't like the modern pan. It was a little round disc that he mixed the gum arabic, and he mixed the watercolor pigment and a little bit of honey so that it was moldable, and he pushed it into a little mold, and he came up with this little cake, and it was a little disc, sort of like a sumi ink cake, and that was what you had for watercolors, so now you didn't have to mix your own. And they were not as soluble. We know that Turner used these throughout his life, even though other things were available. And we know this because we have his set, and we can see how he just ground his brushes down into those cakes. The normal way to use a cake would be to rub it against a china plate, much like you would with sumi ink, and get some of those particles to break down and mix with water so that you had a wash to use. So that's how things went along until about the 1830s, and then the French decided that they wanted something a little bit more jazzy than that, and so they invented the moist pan, not unlike the watercolor pans we have today. Well, there were two gentlemen in England named Winsor and Newton. I forget their first names, but it doesn't really matter anymore because they're just known as Winsor and Newton. And they thought this was a pretty good idea, so they did what they usually do in their business and continue to do to this day. They bought up the patents for all of that, and they started producing their own moist pans. The idea of moist pans was that you could brush the brush right across the pan and color would instantly pick up, and there was no grinding. We went on for a little while longer. It wasn't until 1848 when an American living in England, Mr. Rand, actually invented a collapsible metal tube, and that led the way to then have tube watercolors. And again, Winsor Newton came right in, got the patent for that, and then started selling tube watercolors under the advertising program that these are quick and easy. You just squirt the paint out, wet it, and there you can go. So watercolor has changed a lot over the years, but in a lot of ways it stayed the same. It's still the basic binder, which is gum arabic, and the plasticizer, which now is mostly glycerin, and a couple other components, which I'll talk about maybe in a moment. I'm just trying to see what they're all doing, if I should comment on that. Okay. You're struggling?
I'm going to start over.
Well, starting over is perfectly okay. Perfectly okay. We're only 6 minutes into it, so there's plenty. Yeah. There's plenty of time. There's plenty of time. So that's 1/10 of your time is gone. Yeah, 1/10 of your time. I guess I will go ahead and explain some more about watercolor, and then I want to talk about paper, because paper is sort of what makes this whole thing possible while they continue to sketch. Pat here's got a bunch of different viewfinders that she's using to hold up and look through and sort of help her with cropping. Dan's just eyeballing it, and I don't know what, I don't know what, Jim, have you been using any kind of cropping devices or anything? Or have you?
What?
Cropping devices, or are you just eyeballing it also down here?
You know,
oh, you did a sketch. He did a whole little value sketch. Oh, you did.
Like that, but
Okay.
it is what it is.
Okay, good. It is what it is. I like that. That's good. Yeah. Okay. Well, Jim's already putting water on his paper. Okay, good. I like that. Then you can roam the stage with me. So since he's already doing the water, I just wanted to say something about paper, because we couldn't have watercolor paintings if we didn't have the kind of paper. They wouldn't be the same if we didn't have the kind of paper we have today. And that paper was not in existence until 1757, when James Watman changed the way forever that paper was made. Previous to that time, all paper was made with a screen and a little mold, and it had wires that were running vertically and had little channel lines of other wires between it. And when you made the paper in those molds and you lifted them up, you could hold it up to the light, and you could see a pattern of vertical lines and horizontal lines going across called chains. And that's laid paper. And that was the only kind of paper that was available until 1757. And people watercolored on it. If you're familiar with Albrecht Dürer, an earlier watercolorist from the 15th century, he painted on that kind of paper. And so you had all of these lumps and lines and things in your paper that would actually soak up your paint at different levels. So it's an interesting challenge for the watercolor painter. But what Whatman did, which was innovative, is he took the screen and he wove the wires together so that it would have a more flat surface. And that's where we get the name wove paper, because the screen was actually wove. Once he did that, everything changed. By 1807, the French had developed a mechanized way to do that, and paper, the way that paper was made just basically changed. Previous to that, if you wanted to paint, besides using laid paper, there was something called cartridge paper, and it was called cartridge paper because it was the paper that you ripped up and wrapped your gunpowder and your shot in to stuff it down the barrel of your gun. And that's why it was called cartridge paper. Cartridge paper is still sold today, but it is not what it was 200 years ago. First of all, you can't use it in your ammunition, but second of all, it is not the same stuff. It's usually made from cheap wood pulp and doesn't have the kind of fiber strength that the old cartridge paper did. So there's things that you can't equate from the past to the present, even though they have same names. Another thing like that is varnish. Some of you may have seen, when you go to a watercolor show, you may have seen in the cards it will say something about watercolor and varnish. That doesn't mean they've varnished in the way that we understand, taken a resin and sprayed it all over their watercolor. What that means is they've taken extra gum arabic that's more than what they have in the existing paint at their disposal, and they've added to it. And Pat, I understand, continues to do this with her own practice. She likes to add gum arabic into her paints. She finds that because, well, she's got some there, yeah. Because she has her paints out dry, she finds that after a while they may seem to lose a little bit of their shine, and she puts it right into her water. So this is a long-standing practice, and it will give them a little bit of extra shine. Now, the other thing that gum arabic does is it makes it easier for you to lift up the paint. So once you get it down and it dries, if you want to bring back some whites or highlights, if you've got extra gum arabic in there, then you can just wet your brush and start working at it, and it will pick up more easily, even your staining colors. Now, there's a problem with gum arabic in that if you add too much of it, a couple of bad things can happen. The paint film can become too brittle, and it can actually flake off your painting. And the other thing that can happen if you add too much gum arabic is you can get frothing. And so I'm sure all of you who've been to art exhibits from the 19th century painters in particular, who were getting their paints from a bunch of different sources, and sometimes the quality was dubious. They have, if you look at the sides of the paintings, the edges of the paintings where the brush strokes might have gone off and the water's just sort of getting flicked, you can see little bubbles captured like little fossils because there was too much gum arabic in the paint and the air was trapped in the paint, and then when the bubbles popped, these little impressions of the bubbles were left there. So that's evidence of frothing. So it's one thing you want to avoid. Glycerin is added again so that you can get your colors to pick up, but you want to also be careful that you don't want to add so much glycerin to your paint that you retard the drying time too much, because glycerin will also retard your drying time. So it's something to know if you're putting additives into your paints. Okay, Dan is getting out a hairdryer. This is a good tool for watercolorists. He's put down a first layer of colors, and it looks pretty gray there. So I'm going to come over here and tell you that he's got, is that some cadmium orange up there?
A little cadmium orange. What would a pumpkin be without cadmium orange? Huh?
Exactly. And he's got some magenta coming down. I'm just going to put my hand in here, down here a little bit. He's got some lovely turquoise going in there for the cool area. So he's building up his first layer, getting his colors in, and he'll dry this before he goes on. I don't know if the camera can come over here to Jim. Jim's moving. You are going to be done in like 5 minutes, aren't you? Yeah. Jim's done a couple interesting things here. Besides putting a whole cool background of a mixture of his blues and his cool red there, and he's got some oranges going on in his pumpkin, he's also put a couple pieces of artist tape down on his paper as masking. So then he...
Can you do that?
Yeah. Only Jim is allowed. So, so we've got that going on. And so he can paint over those areas with abandon and know that he's reserved the white of the paper. So that's really good. He's also got some yellow, so there's a lot of stuff going on in Jim's painting.
Can I ask a question about Jim?
Yes, you can ask a question about Jim's painting, not Jim. A person in the audience has noticed that Jim has also, besides his tube colors on his palette, also has these little bottles. These, can I pick one up, Jim?
Sure.
Yeah, these are Hydrus watercolors. They're made by P.H. Martin and, well, Dr. P.H. Martin. But the thing is, you got to be careful. This company makes a lot of products for illustration that are meant to be just shot and discarded, and they aren't for art. This is a fine art product. There is actual pigment in here. It's not a dye-based thing. So if you're interested in these types of liquid watercolors, this is a good way to go. Jim, you know, what's your reason? Do you just like them?
I like these colors when I'm painting on Yupo. Yupo is a plastic surface that right, it's very different than paper. It doesn't absorb the paint sits on top of it. And with these you get a very crystal clear look to them that almost looks like stained glass. And it's a little bit easier for me to get that with the intense colors from the bottle than from the artist watercolor in the wells. But here I was thinking I might just paint in 3 primaries until I saw this and I said, no, I think I'll be a little broader.
Good, good. Well, that's the thing. They have to think on their feet and change their plan because they haven't seen anything. Now, I don't know if the cameras come over here to Pat, if we could come over here. Pat's moving quite along. She's got very bold, strong colors. She's got a purple, a magenta, and blue background going on. She's got orange in the pumpkin, just really going to town on all of this. The question was, are they using their own supplies? All of the artists are using their own supplies. Paper also. But I will tell you, because I know there's a number of watercolorists in this audience, and we always like to know what other people are using. And for people who aren't watercolorists, I'll just say, if you use the same materials that these fine artists are using, you're not immediately going to obviously paint at their level. But what's going to happen, I wish it were that easy, but what's going to happen is if you use the quality materials, either the ones they're using or similar ones, you're going to have a much less frustrating time learning your craft. And so I think all of these artists, you know, Pat teaches, I know Dan's done some workshops with people, would all say that quality materials are good. Yes? I'm going to. Yep. I'm going to, yes, because I know you want to know. Pat is, we're going to start with paper. Pat's well, actually, is everybody using arches today?
Oh, no.
Oh, you switched. But your info card says you're going to use arches.
I switched on her too.
Oh, see, you know, I have all these cards that are worthless now. Okay. So Dan, what kind of paper are you using today?
Crescent cold press watercolor board.
Cool.
Because I'm an old illustrator, and it's really a hot press arches. So Crescent cold press watercolor board, but it has a really slick surface, so the paint just skates across it. If you want to lift a little bit, you can, but it makes nice bleeds, and you can stack up some darks on it without getting too muddy. So it's kind of something I used to do a lot of illustration on when I did that a little bit more.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Pat is using arches. Did you use cold press?
I used a rough.
Okay, so Pat's using rough. Okay, and Jim, are you using arches?
Arches, cold press.
And Jim is using arches cold press. 140 pound. Pat, is yours 140 pound?
300.
She's using 300 pound. So for people who don't know paper weights, the higher the weight, the heavier and stiffer the paper. 300 pound paper is almost the same as a cardboard. It's like a light board. Dan's is mounted, his paper is mounted on a board, so he's not going to get any buckling. All of them have their papers taped down to avoid and minimize that. The reason is you don't want, when you wet the paper, it starts to buckle from the moisture because it's expanding, the fibers are expanding in the paper, and so if you tape it down, that buckling is less annoying to you as you're painting, and then when you're through painting, it will dry tight again. Okay, so as far as paints, pretty much, again, they've all brought their own materials. We have Pat using a bunch of different paints from, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I only have the notes that, you know, before the changes, but Pat uses Winsor Newton, no, I'm sorry, you use Daniel Smith. I use them all. Oh, she uses them all. Holbein, she uses a lot of every brand. So, and also as a teacher, she experiments with different brands to see what she can bring that's quality to her students at also an affordable amount. So, so do you have anything to say about the particular paint you're using today, or you just?
You know, I'm trying to stick with just the red, yellow, and blue.
Okay.
You know, every once in a while I'll sneak in and find something else if it's going to be a little handy, but I really like mixing my colors. I think there's a harmony to it. So, you know, I have a red rose leaf, a Aurelian, and a cobalt blue that I've primarily been using. So what brand? Boy, you know, we'd have to do some forensic science to figure that out, I think. But
You have 37 minutes left. Okay, so my timer is it. That didn't work. Okay, I'm the official timer. Okay, so 37 minutes. So somebody better remind me to look at my watch. I get to chatting and I forget. So what we'll do is in a couple minutes, artists, at some point which won't mess up your washes, if you feel so inclined, could you pick up your piece and turn it to the audience for a brief moment? If you don't come to a point like that, that's okay. There's no penalty. Okay? We've got lots of stuff happening. Well, you know, I could describe to you, there's purples, but all I can say is it's looking really great. Okay, so Pat's going well. Over here we have more greatness. Oh, Pat's going to hold his up. Yay. So we can see they really are making progress, okay? It's working. Yeah. Okay, good. So we're going to go down here and we're going to take a look at, oh, I didn't mention anything. What does it say? Okay, and we got, is that a sponge you're using?
oh yeah, this is a magic eraser.
Oh, that's kind of cool. The magic eraser is the household thing. It's not it's not an eraser that has magic. But it's kind of interesting that she's using it. I haven't seen, do you ever use the scrubby side?
The blue side?
Yeah.
No.
No, okay, okay.
There are no chemicals in this. This is a very fine ceramic particles. So there's no cleaner in it. It's actually just very fine sandpaper.
Yeah.
I
Cool.
met someone who worked there.
So we can all rush out and get one of those. But one of the things I wanted to talk about with also the artists before I move on to the next table is brushes. And all watercolorists have particular brushes that they really love. And what's kind of interesting and maybe unusual today is that all of the artists today are really, they really like those silver brushes. I've got the exact name written down here. What are they called?
Silver black velvet.
Silver black velvet, and they come in rounds and jumbo rounds. They are made with synthetic and a natural Kolinsky hair, and so they're a blend. And they all of the artists here love them because they hold a lot of pigment and a lot of water, and they're all working with those.
The whole world is wet paint.
We've been hanging around with Andy Stevenson, and that's why we.
Yes, and Andy uses those. Yes. But so that's their favorite brush on the day. But there are also some sable rounds. It looks like there's some synthetics in here. So pretty much anything that's going to get the job done, I think Pat would agree. She also feels, she told me before, she feels that way about paper. She'll switch whatever kind of paper she needs because it's going to give her the effects she wants. It either is going to be soft and easy to lift things up, or it's going to take a lot of beating. So she'll change her papers around. Okay, so Dan's over here, and he's using Winsor Newton paints, and you didn't change that on me, did you?
I didn't.
Okay,
no.
good. And and he's also using the same silver black brushes, and it looks like you've got a round and then kind of a mop also.
Yeah, I just pretty much have all these brushes, but I only use one or two. The other ones are for show.
Yeah, okay. Because you have a lot of flats and stuff over there.
Yeah, I do. I just...
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I was just trying to peek in his brush kit over there. Okay, so he's putting in the lantern face. You guys can't even probably see the still lifes correctly, so I'll just tell you really quickly. The still life is a jack-o'-lantern on top of a brown bucket with, in front of that is a mask, just a plain white silken kind of looking mask. And then there's an apple and some acorns and some leaves and a candy dish. And then across the whole thing is... Too much stuff. Yeah, way too much stuff. Yeah. But that's why you use your editing eye. So we'll come over here, and we've already talked about what Jim is using. You're also using Winsor Newton for your tube paints, aren't you?
Yes, well,
yeah.
A mixture of a bunch.
Mixture of a bunch? Okay.
I use cheap Joe's too. It's cheap.
Yeah, cheap Joe's. But they're also good quality. So they're looking for, again, paints that have... Yeah, a lot of pigment in their paints is what they're all going for. So he's just still working on here, getting some details and stuff in here. That's good. Can you see? Well, you know, one of the things that you can see, even though you can't see it in color, and I know that's disappointing, one of the things that you can see is that the values are really starting to develop. Now, they've been working long enough that they're really starting to build up their values. You have 32 minutes left. And I will continue to apprise you of that situation. Okay. And that's just standard Diet Coke that Dan just drank there. Yeah. Yay! Very good. Some of you might not have noticed, but I think it's kind of interesting. Watercolors are very adaptive, and so while Jim has a very nice little stand, sort of table easel to put his board on, Pat's got a toilet paper roll. So you know, you can really make do, and yeah, it's multi-purpose. So, and by putting it up on its end there, even if she uses some of the bulk of it, the level of her painting always stays the same. But you could adjust the angle if you wanted. Okay? So anybody else have any questions about what materials they're using that I haven't covered? Yes?
I'm just curious, you mentioned the silver black velvet brushes.
Yes.
Do they have a favorite size, or with a mop or a flat, or...
With the silver black brushes, the gentleman's asked if they have a favorite size. I think they're going to say large, large, large.
Large, medium, and small.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Jumbo, 16/8.
The thing that makes them so good is they're very similar. They act like a sable brush, and they don't cost nearly as much as a sable brush. They hold a lot of water and a lot of paint, and because they're half squirrel, they come back. They don't stay bent over, and you can really get a nice point. So they really feel like a sable for 1/10 the cost.
Yeah. And the nice pointing thing is nice because you can work with a larger brush, but still do some fine detail. Okay. Anybody else have some questions about what's going on? And I know, yeah, you do, Dan. I know we're in trouble. Yes.
I noticed Pat's doing some lifting. Could you
Yes.
talk about that a little bit?
We'll have Pat talk about lifting. Let me come over here, Pat. You can talk about lifting.
I put paint all over my whole painting, even on top of the whites. And then I lift off all of the light pathway or the light shapes that I wanted, and I tried to connect my shapes. And that way my lights have color to them, and they're more interesting. So it's kind of risky because you have to go very fast and keep it wet. But I wiped it off with a brush, and then I even moved to a small brush, like a scrubby or just an old acrylic brush. And, you know, I can get out, because it's still wet, I can get out some of the light areas. So I like doing, I used to mask. There was someone I was talking to, I mean, like 20 years ago, I used to use masking. And I love this way of doing it, which is from Chen Qi Chi, you know, because you just get such a beautiful whites, and you know, it kind of just holds it all together. And then
Can the sound booth, get over to Pat's? Yeah. And you probably can't from this distance see, but the color that she originally put down is retained in the paper. And you'll see that when you come up, or when you view the final things out there, you'll be able to see that. Okay, good. Anybody else have any questions about what's going on right now? She's lifting off with a couple things.
I used a brush to begin with, you know, and then I went to like an acrylic brush, and then I used the magic eraser. I used paper towels. I, you know, kind of start large and kind of move your way down. So.
Whatever she can get at. So I'm going to move away from Pat right now because we want to have, you know, her focus on the painting. And do you have any questions for Dave or Jim so that we can spread the distraction out a little bit? Down there, yeah. Pay no attention to Jim. Anybody any questions for Dan?
Where can you get the talking back scratcher?
Oh.
Yes.
The question was about being an illustrator and moving to fine arts?
Yeah, I think the thing that was helpful was I came out of college in 1986, and it was almost the last year that people actually drew everything. Computers came in right after, so the benefit that I have is I was able to have hand skills and draw like the old illustrators, and I think it's helpful because you can translate what you see to what you want to paint easier. It gives you a drawing sense, so I think it helps.
Cool. Okay, so we'll leave Dan to get busy again. We'll come over here. A question to bother and disrupt Jim. Something that will put him off his stride here. Really, well, that. let
More
the.
cowbell.
Someone's got a raspberry tool out there. Okay, so we don't have any questions for Jim. I can just say that he's going along. Can we see Jim up there? No, we've got Dan up there right now. Okay, there's Jim. Coming along pretty well. Okay.
I'm almost done, actually.
Okay.
How were
Well-
the artists chosen for this?
I can't speak to that. I think that.
We had a drawing and we lost.
I think, one of the things is I think that the people who were in charge of the event had an idea that there were some people in the Twin Cities who were used to painting under these kinds of conditions because, with someone sticking a microphone in your face all the time, it's not conducive to painting. So you have to be a special kind of thick-skinned kind of individual. So I think that was one of the criteria. Do you know how you were chosen?
Yeah, it meets my public service responsibility and my probation.
That's good. That's good. So other than that, I can't tell you, but I think what's interesting to me about an event like this is that it's tremendously exciting to see someone take a creative idea and actually put it down on paper. And also I think it takes a lot of courage to do it in front of a bunch of people with a clock ticking away, which I should remind you all, we have 25 minutes. So 25 minutes remaining before we have to put our brushes down and do other things. But you're all doing, progressing, so I think, oh, here comes another. Anyone else, any questions?
How much gum arabic dish
Pat put in the water?
You
That's
know,
a
it's
question.
just like an ounce. I mean, not even an ounce. This is 2.5 fluid ounces, so it's like
Couple of drops.
Yeah, a couple drops.
Yeah.
It's like half a teaspoon or less. And I really could use clean water. That's not a bad idea.
Do you have more water? Pat?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so not a whole lot, very little, because you've probably got 2 cups of water in there, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's going to add sheen to the watercolors, so it's going to make them appear brighter and shinier. The other thing that it's going to do is it's going to make it easier to lift up, and we've seen that Pat is a huge fan of lifting, so adding gum arabic is going to assist her in that process. Yeah.
You know, I think that it, you know, when you paint a watercolor and it dries, and you look at it and you go, it looked better before. I think it dries better. I think it retains a little bit of the color.
So that sheen, you know, optically makes it look more vibrant to us, okay? So that's what it does. So you can, and gum arabic is sold either in solution. She has a little bottle here of gum arabic in solution. It's also sold dry. It's nice if it's in solution because then it's just good to go. You don't have to dissolve it with anything, okay?
What color is she painting that pumpkin right now?
Right now, it's just yellow, blue, yep.
Red, yellow, and blue made an orange. I dipped into a little bit of a lemon yellow because I just wanted to make sure it stayed kind of, you know, bright yellow. So, and it's just on top of a lot of other colors. On top of that pumpkin had violet on one side and red in the middle, and so I'm kind of glazing right now.
I just wanted to come down here because we're bothering Pat and using up all Pat's time. So I figure we should equally. Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm going to hang over here now. Yeah. Any questions for Jim? Do you want Jim to talk about the masking he did at the beginning? Would you, Jim, talk about the masking?
Well, when I looked at the painting, I saw some spots that I might want to keep lighter before I did an all-over wash. I may paint over those. I'm not sure. They may be a distraction, but I just stuck down a couple little pieces of paint on highlights, reflections, and I'll pull them off in a minute and look and see if I want to keep them or not. I'm thinking not. I'm thinking that they might just pop out as distractions. But I don't like to use liquid mask, and I don't even do this. But I haven't done a lot of still lifes, so I'm getting real bright highlight reflections I thought I might want to save.
You talk about colors you do?
Okay, she's asked about colors that he uses.
I'm trying to stay primarily with red, blue, and kind of an yellowish orange here, and mixing, trying to keep some constant in here. I'm doing most of my darks in a purplish with some orange mixed in, and I'm trying to stay within that triad of colors on the rest of it. Right now I'm trying to figure out how I can link my darks together so that the painting isn't here, and there, and so I'm going to exaggerate some shadows and try to carry darks through the painting to tie it together.
And so we'll leave Jim to link those.
I'm going to try to tie this area together through here, and that's what I'm looking at right now.
And you said you're an anesthesiologist? No. How much painter to me?
Yes, Dan, could you at some point hold yours up again when it's appropriate and when it's not going to drip in ways you don't want it to? Now, if they hold them up, you better clap. You know, I think, yeah. And Pat, do you want to get a clap too? Yeah, here, clap for Pat. Yeah. Okay. And then Jim, can we see yours again real quickly because you've had so much more time. Let me repeat the question. The audience participant wanted to know what was the biggest, if they had changed their method to fit this kind of situation, and what the biggest change was for time frame. Jim has said that he had to slow down. Dan, what's it been for you?
You can't dwell on something too much. You just have to put things down and not think too much. You just have to kind of use your artist brain and just keep going, and you can't get stuck on a little part. And like we all are doing, we're all painting this, and now we're kind of trying to kind of link some structure to it with some shadows. So that's kind of where we're at now.
And Pat, have you changed your method of approach today in any way?
No, I did practice yesterday, and I just kept telling myself, you know, be true to yourself, just do what you do, and just trying to work all over the whole thing as we're going, you know. But I want to say something. You were talking about how we were chosen or whatever.
Right.
You know, I think I was so excited about this exhibit and about all the events they put on. There was just no way I was going to say no, even though this is very scary. It's just so fun to support this, and you know, hopefully they'll do stuff like this again, right? Isn't this cool?
I know exactly why I was thinking. Andy was teaching a workshop up north today.
I don't know if I should have you repeat that. Do you want to repeat it again?
I said I'm picked because Andy wasn't available. So.
So I think everybody in the audience knows Andy Evanson, a local painter, and he was also past president of the Watercolor Society. So if you don't, that's what the joke is about. Anybody else have a question that they want some of the lights from me? Sandy wanted to see the value sketch Dan had done before he started painting.
It was mostly just trying to figure out if I wanted to go vertical or horizontal. And I kind of realized it's going to be tough. The shapes are kind of tricky because they're all the same size. There isn't a whole lot of size variation. And I could have created size variation, but it's a lot of similar shaped and sized things. So this is mostly just to figure out that I was going to go horizontal with it.
Cool. And Jim, you did a value study. You want to hold that up and show the people real quickly?
Well, I don't know if anybody can see.
Oh, maybe not.
I was just looking for a pattern of light and a pattern of dark coming through the painting, and some of it's there and some of it's imagined. So you want to link your shapes together so that they tie together and the eye follows them through. And I'm still working on that.
Good.
What do you use to make your value sketch?
Well, I just did it with a pencil here. If I have time, I'll do a little painting with just monochrome, Payne's gray or a blue or something to give a simple value sketch to follow, and then try to follow it. That's the tricky part when you have something more complex in front of you.
Cool. Okay. Any other question about the value sketches people did? Nope. Or something else? I'm sorry, can't hear. Oh, Pat, did you do a value sketch?
I didn't do one.
Yeah.
I use my camera. I use this.
Yeah.
You know, I love value sketches. I do them all a lot, but I felt pressured for time.
But don't you feel that the camera allowed you to do a much similar thing?
Yeah, let's look at that.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It flattens everything out, and oh my gosh.
Especially in this light, but that's good to sort of check things and sort of refer back to where your starting point was, so you can see how you've varied and whether that's a good variation or you want to get something back. Pat, how thrilled were you when you saw the subject matter? Dan, just don't say anything for a moment. I can tell by that look. Okay.
You know, I like more natural things. There's a lot of fake things in here.
Yes, okay. So we're going to let Pat deal with this in paint because I've been bothering quite a lot. Dan, what do you think about the still life selection?
It was challenging. What's the opposite of thrilled? I'm sure whoever picked it out is like going, uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, I can attest to they're exactly the same. So it's you know, you have to pick things that can be exactly the same and challenging. Jim, do you have anything to say about the selection of?
I loved it.
Okay, good.
No, seriously, that's fun.
Yeah, good.
You had lights and darks and
Yes.
color, and what more could you want?
Yep, good. It also has some bright sparklies, which is kind of fun. So we've got 12 minutes and 28 seconds going along. If you have a moment, you might want to hold your piece up and show again, just because they aren't seeing theirs, and do give appreciation when they do this. Here's Jim's. Good. So we're getting there. We can see that they're all making some progress here. Pat's working furiously here. So he wants you to incorporate the back scratcher. So that you...
I can put that right through here.
Yeah. It goes with the whole color scheme.
Well, it does go with the color scheme.
That's good.
Now, I brought that just in case the mood got too tense. I was going to come out and go,
Well, it's been very useful. It's been very useful. Well, that's a very good question. I know when they're done because I'm going to call time. And they're going to be done. Okay? That's it. But let's start with Dan. How do you know when a painting is done?
Truthfully, I know when I don't know what I'm doing, when I'm just dabbling around with the brush and I'm not accomplishing anything. If you don't have kind of if you're not making something darker or lighter or warmer or cooler, and you're just fiddling around with the brush, then it's time to stop.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Jim, how do you know when you're done?
I agree with Dan.
Okay.
I'm going to quit when he does.
Okay. He's going to, at the exact same time he quits, you're going to quit. Okay. And Pat, do you have any comments on how you know when you're done?
You know, I usually like to look at them for a few days, but since we won't have that luxury, it's more of a, you know, I always say it's a good thing I put them behind glass, because I would just keep playing on them all the time. I've painting forever, and I still overpaint.
Oh.
To dovetail off what Pat says, it's so hard to evaluate something after you've painted on it a long time. If you put it away and look at it the next day, I think you look at it with fresh eyes and you can tell if something needs to be corrected. But we all get so impatient and we want to correct everything and paint the whole thing in one setting. And the next day is a good time to just take a look at something and you can evaluate it a little better.
Right, great idea. A lot of artists like to put a painting up on an easel in a room that they don't go into very often, and then after the day passes, go in there and take another peek and sort of see. Usually what will happen is when you look at it with a fresh eye, something that you didn't see before will jump out glaring at you, and if you need to change something, that would be the thing to jump out. But that fresh eye only lasts for a very brief period of time, so you really want to take advantage of it. Unfortunately, they don't have the ability to do that today, so when time is up, time is up. And time is going to be up in 8 minutes and 23 seconds. Pat, can you say something about how you develop your signature?
You mean how I sign my name, or
Yeah.
the signature of painting?
How you sign your name, I think, because she was mimicking that, yeah.
You know, when I was little, I used to practice it. I did you? I don't know, you know, I write really fast. I don't know, it just kind of, how do you develop it? I write really fast. I don't know that as an adult I think about what do I use to sign it? A brush.
Yeah.
On watercolor I use a brush. In acrylic I'll scratch into it. So.
Cool. Well, skip Dan for, I was going to come back to you, but Dan, what's your approach to signing your painting?
I have a really hard time signing my name with a little rigger brush, so a lot of times I'll just take a little permanent ink pen because it just is so much easier to sign it. You know, sometimes I use a brush, but I just hate an excruciatingly tight little signature. When my work is loose, I just want to be able to just sign it with a pen or something. So I sign it with a pen a lot of times.
Great. And Jim, are you finished now? You're walking away for that fresh eye?
I'm to put a face on my pumpkin. I kind of like the pumpkin without the face.
Yeah. It works.
I think I'll leave it on.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I'm getting very close. I've just got to look at it and say. I got my shadows linked, and overall, I think compositionally it needs a little. I need to tie this into the edge a little bit better. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
And can you say something about how you like to sign your paintings? And how you arrived at that method of signing?
You know, I've tried a lot of different things. I usually just take a little fine magic marker and sign my name the way I do everything else.
Okay.
I hadn't really thought about it. You know, I've seen people, like Chen Qiqi's a good example, who has this magnificent little square stamped calligraphy that he uses, or Alvaro Castanet with his, you know, CAD red signature, and you can see it across the room. Not that you need to see it across the room to identify the artist, but.
Yeah.
I think I'll just stay with simple.
Okay. Well, and I think Jim brings up an interesting point. How you sign your name is as individual as each individual artist, and I think it's something that you also want to judge what is important. You know, is it going to work? If you have a very broad and brilliant signature, is it going to take away from the composition of what else you're doing? Or is that really important for you that everyone knows who painted that painting? So it could go either way. But yes, I can't see over, yes. She's wondering if the artists typically stand when they're painting. Jim, do you typically stand?
Always.
Always stands. Dan, how about you?
Yeah, almost always.
Okay. And Pat, do you stand?
Half the time, yes, half the time, no.
Okay. So advice to a young watercolor, a child beginning watercolor. Pat, any advice? And I'll just hold this while you keep painting.
Draw every day.
Great. Great. Dan?
Realism isn't the only solution. There's so many different ways to go, and the more you paint and the more you draw, it's just like building a foundation, the better you get. You can read a lot of books, but you actually have to draw and paint to get better. So.
Great, 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 great. Jim?
I echo both of those, but the other thing that you can learn a lot is to look through art and find people who you like, say, I like that, and then copy it. I learned how to paint by watching people who I like paint and trying to do what they did. And eventually, if you do that, you'll learn a lot about what they did. And it's okay to copy painters. You go to any good museum and there's people sitting there, you know, reproducing that artwork, and it's an excellent way to learn.
Great. It's also a way to learn different approaches, how someone did it, what their pictorial vocabulary is. It may be something that you never use in your own pictures, but at least you can understand it. It's a good way to get into their minds. For today, was one of the instructions to use transparent and not acrylic? No, they didn't have that instruction, but everybody has just used watercolor because it is a watercolor event linked to the National Watercolor thing. But I guess maybe there's some acrylics in there. But no, everybody just chose today. We didn't have that kind of imposition on it. Great question. Do you as an artist date your painting along with your signature? What are your thoughts on that, Pat?
You know, I tell students to do that because then you can see, you know, and remember when you painted something. I never date my paintings. I kind of know when, because you photograph them and then they're stored in your computer, but it's pretty depressing to look at a painting you did 12 years ago and you still have it. I don't know. I don't know.
But it was a special one you wanted to keep. Dan, what are your thoughts on dating?
I wish I would remember the dates. I don't date them because I know that people don't. They want a newer painting, and from the illustration, I never dated my illustrations because nobody wanted old art. So if you show somebody a painting, they think you painted it yesterday when you might have painted it 12 years ago. So I probably should date mine, but I never date my paintings.
Good, good. And Jim, what are your thoughts on dating your paintings?
I agree with Dan. I don't put a date on them.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Good, good. What they don't know won't hurt them. So, good. Okay, we have 53 seconds, folks. No, you don't have to sign them in the time. I can, well, actually, maybe I should make you sign them. 41 seconds. And remember, at 12:45 to come back here after you voted, come back here and we'll have more opportunity to ask the artists very specific questions, and then you'll find out who won, and you'll find out who won the paintings, and you'll also get some more information. So be back at 12:45, but in the meantime, be sure and get your raffle tickets, 15 seconds, raffle tickets, and vote when the things go outside, which will be a couple minutes after we end here. 7 seconds, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. Brushes down. Good. Thank you very much. Okay, so they're going to take them away. They're going to be framed. You can vote for them out there. Remember to buy your raffle tickets. We're going to see you back here at 12:45. Okay, so first question over here. So what kind of practice does Pat do, and specifically what did she do yesterday for this? And is this on, Jordan? Okay.
I set up a still life and I painted for 6 hours.
Whoa.
And the first painting was horrid. And by the end of the day, when I quit when the painting was okay. So I just painted. You know, just tried different approaches. You know, I just warmed up.
Stretching your muscles. Yep. And Jim, what did you do for practice?
I went on a long bike ride. No,
He went on a long
I did the same thing. I just set up a still life because I never paint still lifes, and I thought about and I painted a truly awful painting, and so then I did it again, and it was a little less awful, and then I showed my wife. I said, "Which one of these like better?" And she liked the less awful one. And it boiled down to what you do in any painting. You think about your composition, you think about value pattern, and so at that point I said, well, I'm just going to do what I usually do.
Yep. And sometimes you find too, by doing that, that's exactly when you find that you ease into what you normally will do.
The still life I painted was near as nice as this one.
Okay. And Dan, did you do anything for
I didn't. I drank too much the night before, so I watched golf and napped a little bit yesterday.
But that's good. You were resting.
I was, yeah.
That's very good. Anybody else have a question for the artists about their materials, how they proceed with things? Raise your hand if you have a question. Yes, over there? So technique about, can you
So I put paint down all over the whole thing. You know, I started with yellow, and I put yellow all over my paper, and then I went to red or orange. I probably went to orange, and then I put that all over, and then I did, you know, so until I went through, and I had, you know, all the primary and secondary colors all over my painting, including where the white was. And then I took my brush, and I got it wet, and I wipe it off. It's called a thirsty brush. And then you can pull off where the white areas are. And when I did that, it left, you know, a faint hint of color, and soft edges. It's also what made the painting look very soft. And then, you know, and then of course it started drying, so then I got out the magic erasers and started scrubbing and using paper towels to blot it, and, you know, and because we were under a time restraint, usually I would just pull it off with a brush, but I was kind of going quick and, you know, being interrupted. So,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. I was responsible for those interruptions.
But that's what I did.
Yeah.
So
Question was, does she mount her watercolor paper on any kind of board?
I have done that. I use matte medium or, you know, acrylic Palmer, and I just, you know, you just put a heavy coat onto a masonite board, and the paper even just flattens out. You know, it gets moist from the matte medium, it just flattens out and it goes flat. I have done that.
Do you put anything to
and
weight
then-
on it while it
No, I
dries?
don't. It just flattens out, and I haven't had any problem with that. And I did that because I was varnishing my paintings, because I was trying to get away from framing my paintings, but you really do have to frame them because they were varnished on a board and they had wood sides and they get all beat up, and the frame protects it or whatever. But so I have done that. I was using 300-pound paper. You really don't have to mount 300-pound paper. It's pretty stiff. And so.
Well, let's start with Jim. Jim, did you flirt with the idea of going abstract at any point?
Yes, very much so. We all talked about that. We all saying, I hope it's something that we can work from to abstract. And for myself, I have a real problem with getting locked into imagery in front of me. If I'm going to do an abstract, I will typically work from a sketch or work from a photo that I've either black and whited or cropped severely or something like that. And I think just mentally I would have had trouble getting away from this with it sitting in front of me. So I ended up being fairly representational. I tried to be loose, but I ended up painting what was in front of me because I think it would have been too hard for me to abstract it in an hour when the process of abstracting for me is a pre-painting thing.
Yeah, I wanted to get so much more abstract. The whole week I was envisioning what the still life might be, and I had this beautiful tall vertical with curly sticks or something that I could play off the lines and everything, and I was horrified when the box came off. And not only are all the shapes the same size, but they're all kind of the same kind of little round shape, and I really wanted to abstract it, and I just kind of got a little quivery and just had to kind of get locked in a little bit to representation. I do normally like to abstract things more because I don't want to just paint what's in front of me. I want to try to, so I tried to be as loose as possible and get some hard edges and soft edges and some drips, but in my mind I had this beautiful abstract painting and I completely had to shift gears when I saw it.
Maybe you'll let you take it home.
I don't need to, no thanks.
Yes, I wanted to be much more simple you know, and much less detail, you know. So in my mind, in the things I was painting yesterday, you know, at first I started out painting everything, and then I zeroed in and just did, you know, a few things and left everything else kind of, you know, left to, you know, the viewer to kind of complete, you know, and just have it be shapes, and that's what I want. That was my plan, and I, you know, I just couldn't find one thing that I could, you know, stand alone. So, you know, it was a fun problem. It was a problem to solve.
I was curious, and I talked with Jim a little bit about this during the break. Did any of you at any time when it was revealed consider jumbling the things up into a different organization? Because it'd still be the same things, but did you consider that at all?
I tried to consider taking a little slice. You know, in my head, I was going to have kind of an abstract composition, like a cruciform or something, and take just a slice of it and try to paint it in there. I knew that I didn't want to paint everything. I thought maybe if I create a vignette, I can paint a little bit of the detail in the middle and then fall off with the outside edges. So I don't know. So I didn't really change things up. And in fact, you saw I painted a face on my pumpkin, so I was pretty literal. But
he was pretty smart there, leaving that face off. You know, looking at it right from here, boy, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That would make a nice vertical.
Yeah.
It was difficult because it was so face on. I mean, if I was walking around it, I absolutely wouldn't have it looking at me, and we were kind of confronted with the mask and the pumpkin just looking right at me. It's kind of like that scary clown kind of.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of time to think. I mean, an hour is,
right.
you know, you know, so I felt the time. I think I felt the time constraint.
Okay.
The one thing on the face, I mentioned this to a couple people. For me, if you put a face in a painting, it becomes automatically the center of interest, and even if it's a caricature of a face. And so I thought real carefully about putting that in, and I'm glad I asked you guys, because I still was considering at the end putting it in faintly at least, because it does, you know, from a thematic standpoint, it fits perfectly well with Halloween and fall and so forth.
But so does just a plain pumpkin.
Yeah.
It's like typography. Yeah, if you put type,
Right.
if you paint a picture and have a billboard and have like Joe's Mobile, it's like your eye will go right to that typography, just like the face. So.
Did you give specific instruction? Were you given specific instructions about what you could or couldn't do?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it is weird how you kind of get into, you get locked in. I mean, if I were to teach a class and a student would have painted the painting I would have painted, I would have said, boy, loosen up and edit some things out and something, but I didn't, you know, and it was like, you know, the box came off and I'm like shaking and I'm like, oh my God, I got to paint a pumpkin face, you know, and so I painted a pumpkin face. I mean, if I were to do it again, I could probably come up with something so much more creative now that I've actually had a chance to look at it. I could probably do a couple sketches and come up with something that's a lot more artful, but I just kind of got into lockstep of what was in front of us a little bit.
Yeah, because the clock is moving.
And the same thing, I'm trying to learn how to be a plein air painter, and I love to do it, but my plein air paintings typically aren't really things that I like to take home and put on the wall. And it's the same thing. There is so much in front of you that you really need to focus in on what it is that attracted you to that place, and edit and edit and edit and squint and get a value pattern, and this is a good example of that. It's really hard not to paint the apple and the acorns and the leaves and the broom and the face and the rest of it. It's especially in an hour with 200 people watching you.
And I didn't get to see your final painting, Jim. When you pulled the masking tape off, did you cover the highlight areas, or were they too harsh, or did you like them, or what did you do?
Well, I forgot to pull it off until they were taking it away, and so I think they're all still there.
Okay. Because I know you were debating the last time I spoke to you when you were working. Anybody else have a question for one of the artists or all of the artists? So the question is that there are different approaches with their color palettes, and I'll let the artists each speak to that. We can maybe start with Pat.
You know, I think everyone sees color differently. You know, so, and I do use primaries, but I shake them up and I use different primaries at different times so that I get you know, so my paintings don't all have the same color. So I thought it was mine. I couldn't turn it off. And then you said turn your phone off. I was like, oh well. So I knew that I wanted to, you know, be red and orange. You know, I wanted that to be kind of the focus. That was kind of my plan.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the, I was thinking there was a little orange that carried through, obviously, down through the little candies and through the leaves and things, and I wished I would have made it a little bit more of an uneven balance. I kind of have oranges and blues, opposites that are a pretty common opposite combination, but as I painted mine, in the end, there was about 50% orange and then 50% blues and stuff, and I think I wished I would have had a real unbalanced, maybe 20% of this little hot little orange that came through of a kind of a blue picture. Maybe it would have had more drama, and in hindsight, that might be one of the things I would do differently. But you know, my picture, if you look at it, it's about half oranges and warms and half cools, and I would make it a little bit more uneven and create some more tension.
Yeah, I think we'd all do something different if we had another drawing. But when I looked at this, I saw warm. I saw red and orange and yellow, and basically I tried to put a cooler background in, and even my cooler background got a little bit warm, but I'm thinking of the blues and in the shadows, getting into blues. I have a real problem with purple. I tend to use a lot of purple, and I'm trying to get away from that. There are,
Yeah.
well, the bloom is purple, but my whole dark ended up being more purple than I would have liked, but I'd do it different if I did it again. I wanted to keep it, this was so warm, I wanted a cool contrast in the background, and it even my cool got a little warm.
Okay. Another question. I'm going to come back to you but go ahead down here.
Okay, maybe this was asked before, but could they have changed the table so they could have looked at it?
Well, see, I asked that question too because it was my understanding they couldn't, but I think Dan expressed it very well that when it's revealed, you go, oh shucks, it's a pumpkin, you know?
I didn't say shucks, though.
Well, I know. and Dan, usually I wouldn't say shucks either. So I think what happens in the time constraint is that you don't think of those things that you normally would. Dan said that if he'd had his students here, you know, he would have just had them. So I don't think I'm misspeaking there. Yeah. So I think, you know, when you get up here, it's all of this. It's a different kind of thing than being down there or being, you know, in your own studio. You suddenly, you're very aware of the fact that Roz keeps telling you how much time you have, you know. Question over here?
Yeah, my question was, what if the time limit had been less? Could you have done it in 45 minutes?
Could you have done it in 45 minutes? Well, Jim doesn't have to answer that because yes.
I was basically done in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was too. I was just kind of overworking it at the end. I mean, I could have probably done it in a half hour, and it wouldn't have been a worse painting. It might have been fresher. But yeah, plenty of time.
Yeah.
You know, I would have struggled it because I put too many things in there. I could do it in less time if I edited it.
Yep.
And also a smaller piece of paper would have been would make
okay.
less time.
If I would have treated it like a thumbnail and done this big, fresh, kind of a thumbnail thing in like 10 minutes, that might be a better, fresher painting than trying to say, okay, we've got an hour, and you do kind of say, well, I better fill this time, you know, and just keep noodling around with it.
Yeah.
The thing that struck me is this is such an interesting and completely artificial way to make a painting where you have a time limit. It doesn't matter if it's a half hour or an hour, 45 minutes, you know, in the back of your mind you're going, and a subject matter you didn't pick and didn't anticipate. It was really a lot of fun. I'm not being negative, but it takes you out of your usual habits of how you would do a painting.
Right. And was that good experience then? Is there something that
it was a
you think
hoot.
about today that you'll take back into the...
Yeah, all you artists out there, try it sometime. You know, get together and give each other a subject matter or a photograph and say, all right, you got 45 minutes, let's see what you can do. It was fun.
So play the home version. We're actually going to turn this into a little board game. So we're going to get this woman back here with a question.
Yeah, I was wondering about Jim. Did you take any art classes in college, or about your background? Why don't you tell us how you got into watercolor?
Oh gosh, I have been interested in art my whole life, but no, I didn't take outside of high school art classes. But I used to do a lot of photography. I used to do printmaking, and I have drawn my whole life. I mean, I have books full of drawings. And about 16 years ago, Jack Lebo over there and I decided we were going to learn how to watercolor. We've been doing workshops ever since. Jack has a fine arts background. He was a major in fine arts, and he's a orthopedic surgeon now. So, but yeah, just I made a commitment. I said, this is something I want to learn how to do. When I would go to an art show, I would gravitate towards watercolor. I love the freshness and the crispness of it, and I always wanted to learn how to do it. So it's never too late. I was just talking to a man in the audience who started at age 80 here, and is loving it. And yeah, I think I'm talking to the choir here. About half the people here I recognize, but it especially for somebody with a job so entirely unrelated, it takes you into a different place and uses a different part of your brain. It's a wonderful thing.
Cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, I've never painted in oil. I think I can paint in oil. I've painted a lot in water media and in watercolor and acrylics, and there's a kind of a tempo about watercolor that I like. And sometimes with an oil painter, they can sit and putz and just kind of noodle around on an oil painting, and you can't do that with watercolor. It's a media that shows if you've overworked it or freshly put it down and confidently put it down. And some of the other medias, you can't see that kind of that connection with the artist. So that's what attracted me to watercolor a long time ago.
Yeah.
What attracted me to watercolor?
I think that's, yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
You know, it's economical. That's why
Yeah.
I probably picked it up more in my 20s. I mean, I went to college for art and all that, and when you go to be an art teacher, you get to play with everything. Jewelry, clay, and I gravitated toward watercolor because it really is probably the most economical painting medium.
And as long as you don't ingest it, it's hypoallergenic. Yes. Yeah, so, but you shouldn't be ingesting.
All right, the moment has arrived. Thank you all again for your patience with a number of things today. I heard we were backstage working on framing, and I heard questions about the technical aspects and all that. So again, appreciate your patience, and don't they indeed look lovely, these
Yes,
three framed
gorgeous.
pieces. So, all right. So the plan is we're going to do the drawings first and announce the winner by popular vote. That will be the last thing that we do. So Roz, would you help me with the drawings, please? Colleen Murphy is the winner of the Dan Weimer watercolor. So Colleen, the vote, I assure you all, the vote was not rigged. Colleen was one of our volunteers today, so fabulous.
How great is that?
How about that? Colleen might have even framed that back there, for all I know. We all kind of worked on all of them. All right, we're next going to draw for Jim Turner's watercolor. Just going in order, again, of how we happen to have them up here on the table.
Okay.
All right. So the winner of the Jim Turner watercolor is Linda Stout. Is Linda here? Not that you have to be, but is she here somewhere? Oh, very good. Congratulations. All right, and last but certainly not least, we're going to draw for the Pat Undis watercolor.
They're all so gorgeous. It's really fun to see them all framed like that. I think that's the one.
Okay. Now, I may not pronounce this. It's one of those OE names correctly. Nancy Haft. Congratulations. The last thing that we want to do is to, well, thank you all again for participating. This has been fabulous. And Roz, also. And I guess just because I have the microphone, I will announce that the winner of the popular vote is Dan Weimer. Congratulations, Dan. Thank you all again for coming. Have a wonderful afternoon.